Moving on now, a new report published this morning by Amnesty International focuses on the barrel bomb campaign by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The report details the abuses being committed in Aleppo by government forces and armed opposition groups on a daily basis, and concludes that some of the government's actions in the Syrian city against civilians amount to crimes against humanity. The report paints a particularly grim picture of the devastation caused by barrel bombs. Barrel bombs are packed with explosives and metal fragments, and they've been dropped on schools, hospitals, mosques, and crowded markets, forcing residents to seek safety by moving into our basement and bunkers. We're going to discuss this in just a moment, but first let's take a look at the latest in Syria, and then we'll discuss the Amnesty report in detail.
In another escalation of the crisis in Syria, mortar bombs launched from Syria wounded 2 United Nations peacekeepers in the Golan Heights on Monday, in what appeared to be stray fire from the Syrian civil war. A military spokesperson said the peacekeepers were taken for treatment at an Israeli hospital. Meanwhile, the Ahrar al-Sham group in Syria seized a crossing in the southwest frontier area near Israel. The capture by the Idlib-based group would represent a major setback for Bashar al-Assad's regime. In another blow to Assad, a major general who heads the munitions and supply division of the Syrian army was wounded in a bombing attack in a central Damascus district on Monday. The suicide bomber reportedly detonated the bomb in Rukn ad-Din, a neighborhood of several security compounds. Meanwhile, United Nations consultations on Syria are expected to take place in Geneva on Tuesday, but expectations are admittedly low.
These are low-key, low-profile consultations, and they're not being held at presidential level. They're being held at the working level.
Earlier this year, tensions flared along Israel's northern border for the second time this year, following a suspected Israeli Air Force attack on weapon deliveries to Hezbollah, making the possibility of a future conflict between Hezbollah and Israel a potential development in the regional scenario.
We're joined now in studio by I-24 News senior Middle East analyst Ali Waked. Good morning, Ali. Thank you for joining. And by Amnesty International Israel communication manager Ronnie Mרגלית. Good morning, Ronnie. Thank you for joining us. This report calls Aleppo a circle of hell. Where has the world been? I mean, this is something that has come in the last 4 years of civil war. We've been speaking about it, but this is no new news in terms of the hellish atmosphere that's in Aleppo.
Right. The dimensions are, we chose the report to concentrate on Aleppo because it is the biggest Syrian city. And unfortunately, a year ago, the UN came with a resolution said that war crimes and crimes against humanity have to end, but the international community didn't involve, and the situation continues. And actually, the new report that Amnesty published today shed light on what happens on Aleppo these days about the barrel bombs that the government dropped on civilians these days. Only 3,000 people died last year from those attacks, and definitely Amnesty International calls the international community to involve.
Because this is not the first time that the international community has tried to be involved in the past, but it has mostly backed off very quickly. It starts, makes a few steps forward and then goes a few steps back. What can this report do on the ground and implement that beyond the words and beyond describing the horrors?
On the ground, it is very difficult. What the report shows is that many civilians actually moved underground in order to save their life, many schools and hospitals, and it shows that the government deliberately dropped those bombs on school, hospitals, mosques. There was, a year ago, there was a special UN envoy to Syria and to Aleppo that came up with an initiative for freeze. Nothing has so far showed any results, but we keep on showing what happened these days in Syria and hoping that the international community will involve.
And Ali, geopolitically, Aleppo is still under Assad regime, but slowly rebels are taking over that area, and many are citing coordinated efforts from behind: Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and saying that these are efforts that the rebels are now working together rather than working apart, and this is why Aleppo is losing, or Assad is losing Aleppo.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that as part of the agreement between Saudi Arabia and the United States about the coalition against the Islamic State. The Saudis demanded to rearm and retrain the rebels, and they are emphasizing over Aleppo as the biggest city in the region that is not fully under the control of the regime. This is why in the amnesty we saw that the atrocities are also shared between the regime and the rebels, and the use of gas by the rebels. It was something very interesting and important in the report. The situation is going towards a deadlock, Yael. No, if we thought like a couple of months ago that there was a beginning of a breakthrough in favor of the regime, the efforts concentrated by Saudi Arabia, the money, the fact that Turkey is doing everything needed in order to facilitate the transfer and the passing of fighters and weapons inside Syria, and the fact that Jordan once again is contributing and allowing training camps to take place at its soil, explain the fact that there was no breakthrough, and on the contrary, the rebels are gaining more and more ground in important cities in Syria.
Can this report impact at all the regional players? As we said, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar. Can this change something within? Because obviously this report is going to raise a lot of eyebrows, to say the least, in the Western nations.
I will remind you, Yael, that 2 years ago there was a huge chemical attack with hundreds of people who were killed, and nothing happened.
That was supposed to be the red line, right?
Exactly. And every time in this conflict there are new red lines. And unfortunately for the Syrian people, I don't believe that Amnesty report will change anything in the data that is on the ground. We are expecting today a round of consultation in Geneva between some rebels group or some opposition group and the Syrian regime, and also there no horizon is to be expected.
Ronnie, what is expected? What does Amnesty at least expect from the world in the short term? What steps should be taken right away?
Well, there is this initiative I mentioned earlier by the UN Special Envoy, and Amnesty is campaigning and lobbying towards kind of forwarding this to end the situation as it is. We try as much as we can, and it is important to let people know what happened in Syria these days and what the Syrian people are dealing with.
And this is firsthand, of course, testimony from civilians that have survived the atrocities done there. Ronnie, Mרגלית, thank you for joining us. Ali Wakat, thank you.